Each and every Monday, I go over the biggest risers and fallers in average draft position, aka ADP, in the best ball markets. I'll discuss whether I'm buying or selling these players at their new prices and why. The idea is to get you up to speed very quickly on what's happening out there in the drafts and how to adjust. Let's begin with the best ball risers from the last 7 days. First one is Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed is up one spot to 60th overall on DraftKings. I want to be clear on the Packers wide receiver situation. From a projection or math-based standpoint, it is hard to get there versus ADP on pretty much all of the Packers wide receivers. And that's because we are projecting very flat target shares across the board. We're currently at Jaden Reed, 15.5% of the targets, Christian Watson, 15%, Romeo Doubs, 14.6%, Dontavian Wicks, 12.1%. We're also giving reasonable target shares to Josh Jacobs, solid share to Luke Musgrave, a little to Marshawn Lloyd, a little to Tucker Kraft. I didn't even mention Bo Melton, who gave the Packers some really good snaps last season at the wide receiver position. And I think our projection is right. I think the talent is good, but flat. Like there isn't a true alpha situation that's going to emerge. I think the coaches and Jordan Love will make it a point to spread the ball around. But if I'm wrong on that, if we're wrong and one of these wide receivers does end up earning 20% or more of the targets, then yes, it's a smash. And I do agree with the market that the Packers wide receiver most likely to do it, even if I think it's unlikely, is Jaden Reed. Just a really strong rookie year and really strong year 2 profile. But I can't quite get there on Jaden Reed at 60th overall. We're not far off. We're at 70th overall in our DraftKings best ball ranks right now. But part of it for me is as a somewhat undersized slot guy, and I'm not trying to disrespect Jaden Reed. I think he's an awesome player. But as a somewhat undersized slot guy, doesn't really play in 2 wide receiver sets. Packers ran 381 plays last year with 2 wide receivers or fewer on the field. Jaden Reed was only in on 16 of them. Not a big deal. They're running a lot out of those 2 wide receiver sets. It's not a big deal, but it's just not ideal either on top of all the other target share stuff. Second riser is Isaiah Pacheco. Pacheco up 1.4 spots on Underdog to 45.6 overall. Chiefs just continue to show more and more faith in Isaiah Pacheco. He does this really rare thing in 2022 where he wins a job as a round 7 rookie and immediately contributes in a big way. And then last season, 2023, Pacheco becomes the feature back for the Super Bowl champs. I mean, in the Chiefs' 4 playoff games, Pacheco averaged 20.2 carries and 3 targets per game. 4 biggest games of the year for the Chiefs, 20.2 carries and 3 targets per game. And then this offseason, Chiefs have done very little at running back. Jerick McKinnon remains a free agent. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is back, but it's clear they don't like him. I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire had a total of 11 carries and 4 targets in those 4 playoff games. And then you have the Deneric Prince and Keontae Ingram types behind them. So on roll, yes, I think it's a check for Pacheco. On offensive line, that's a check for Pacheco too. Chiefs are 4th overall in Brandon Thorne's offensive line rankings. Hopefully all you guys have DraftKit Pro and read Thorne's article there. On efficiency, easy yes for me given Pacheco talent scheme combo and the way defenses have to play Mahomes. The only concern for me on Pacheco on touchdown heavy Underdog is red zone throw rate. Chiefs 2nd highest in the NFL behind only the Vikings last season. And I think that's probably sticky. So they're going to be throwing a lot around the goal line in the red zone. But overall, yes. I mean, I'm still in on Pacheco on half PPR Underdog, even as he rises here. Prefer him over Travis Etienne, who goes a little bit early. Third riser to discuss is Troy Franklin, Broncos rookie wide receiver, up 1.6 spots on Underdog to 171 overall. This one hits a sweet spot for me personally, as we must engage the now world famous shower narrative. Yes, it's likely Bo Nix and Troy Franklin indeed showered together at the University of Oregon, which almost certainly created a bond that's difficult to replicate, which may or may not mean that Bo Nix is more likely to target Troy Franklin versus other Broncos receivers and also have more success when targeting Franklin thanks to that chemistry. Our data side team is actually testing all this shower narrative stuff right now. I wish I was joking on that, but I'm actually not. So we'll report back on that. But anyway, I've talked about Bo Nix backdoors before. I think it's interesting, if only because I still like Sean Payton as a schemer. The Broncos stacks are absurdly cheap, and there's a lot of ambiguity, which I think is a good thing when looking for upside this late. But I've personally been spreading my bets pretty wide here. On DraftKings, I don't hate the McLaughlin Bo Nix backdoor when I'm in need of both running back and quarterback. And I have backed off Greg Dulcich, given the Lucas Krull hype. That one just seems muddy to me. And probably some bias there for me too, because I had Dulcich in a ton of high stakes stuff last year and he buried me. At wide receiver, I'm just not confident enough right now in the depth chart to have a big bet on Troy Franklin. I mean, let's be honest. He was the 17th wide receiver off the board in the real NFL draft this year. 17. 16 other teams needed wide receiver and decided, nah, not Troy Franklin. And the competition isn't strong, but he's competing with Courtland Sutton, who I assume will cave on this holdout stuff, Marvin Mims, who desperately needs a bigger role, which I think Peyton has acknowledged in the wake of Jerry Jeudy moving on. They added Josh Reynolds, who coaches love to play. And don't forget Tim Patrick, who, if he's healthy, which is a long shot, I know, but if he's healthy, Tim Patrick might be the best wide receiver on this team. He's coming off the ACL. So I don't want to worry too much about depth charts right now. I want to be in on talent. But the NFL told us what they think of Troy Franklin's talent. We also have to get two things right here. We have to get that right, that Bo Nix is at least decent and Franklin can emerge and earn a 70% or more route share. So a bit of a parlay for me. Have a few late round stabs on Troy Franklin, but not many. Let's get to this week's fallers. Let's start with Ricky Pearsall. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Ricky Pearsall down 2.3 spots to 141 overall. Not surprised here. We've been way lower than market on Pearsall for the last couple months. I think I've done roughly 70 drafts so far, and I have taken Ricky Pearsall once. And there's good reason for that, which I'll get to in a minute. But first, I want to be clear that, generally speaking, Pearsall is the kind of bet I want to make. A talented rookie, strong draft capital. Remember, the Niners took him 31st overall in the draft. He's entering an elite offensive scheme. This is the kind of bet that I like to make late at wide receiver. The problem is simply roll. I do not think Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel will be traded before the season. The 49ers are firmly in their Super Bowl winning window. Ayuk and Deebo are worth more to the 49ers than they are to another team. I said the same thing about T. Higgins. You don't get rid of elite wide receivers when you're trying to win now, or unless you absolutely have to due to cap concerns. So assuming Ayuk and Deebo are in San Francisco and they're healthy, Ricky Pearsall has a problem because the 49ers firmly, annually, run some of the fewest three wide receiver sets in the entire NFL. Last season, they were 31st in formations of three wide receivers or more at just 41%. Contrast that with someone like the Rams, who were at 95%. Even the number 30 team, the Dolphins, were up at 49% in three wide receiver or more sets. 41% from the Niners, just really, really low. So barring a shocking trade or an injury, it's just real tough to see Ricky Pearsall's route rate being viable, especially after the 49ers just gave coach's favorite, Juwan Jennings, a new deal that included $8 million guaranteed. And especially since we've seen this before with Kyle Shanahan. He took Tyrion Davis-Price round 3 in 2022. Guy never really played. Took Trey Lance, number 3 overall. He just ate the mistake after 4 career starts. Trey Sermon was a round 3 pick that year. Nope. Brandon Ayuk himself was the number 25 overall pick in 2020. Didn't play for a decent amount of the year before getting out of the doghouse. So I know, the response to this from the Pearsall stands is, well, 49ers have never had a number 3 wide receiver like this before. He's going to force them to run more 3 wide receiver sets. That's a bet that I'm probably not willing to make. I don't think Pearsall's prospect profile is that great. And Shanahan's history with rookies, he's not going to force them onto the field just because he spent a bunch of draft capital. So all this is a long way of saying, yes, I think it's worth taking some shots on Pearsall in extreme large field. Best ball stuff is part of Purdy stacks. You get lucky, run into an Ayuk or Deebo injury. But on my main teams, just an easy pass for me in this 141 range. Oh, one more thing. For Dynasty bros out there, I do think Ricky Pearsall is a smash because one of Ayuk or Debo will almost certainly be gone after this season. And I think that's the reason the Niners used that 31st overall pick on him, not for year one impact as much as for preparing for the situation coming up in 2025 at the wide receiver position for the 49ers. Second faller is Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott down 1.4 spots to 96.5 overall on Underdog. Also down 2.1 spots on DraftKings to 77.5. Few things here. First, I don't think Dak should be going later. We're talking 19 spots later on Underdog versus DraftKings. Quarterbacks are worth significantly more on Underdog because it's half PPR, not full. Even with the 300-yard bonus on DraftKings, quarterbacks are going to be a higher percentage of your weekly score on half PPR Underdog. Second, it's relatively easy to get Dak Prescott when you take CeeDee Lamb in round one because no other Cowboys go early. There aren't many owners to fight with you over Dak. It's not like the CJ Stroud situation where you have the Nico owner, the Steph Diggs owner, the Tank Dell owner all trying to get Stroud. So yeah, on Dak, someone could go Jake Ferguson, Dak Prescott, but that's really the only threat. The flip side of that is the viability of taking Dak without CeeDee Lamb. I certainly don't love it. Dak Prescott's huge games are really likely to include most of CeeDee Lamb's huge games also. Whereas you could see Jared Goff having a big game with a muted Amon-Ra game. We've seen that. Jalen Hurts with a muted A.J. Brown game. Maybe he does it rushing or Goddard or Devonta Smith. So that's tough for me to take Dak, but I do think it without CD, but I think it'll be somewhat unique in large field to have things like Ferguson, Dak, Brandon Cooks, or Dak, Brandon Cooks, Tolbert. But in terms of a vacuum on Dak, I'm in. He had some crazy games last year, weird games where the defense scored touchdowns, but Dallas' intent was clear. They were 6th in pass rate over expectation, played at a really fast pace. I don't think that will change. In fact, with the running backs so dusty, we're talking about Ezekiel Elliott, Rico Dowdle, I think Dallas could be even more throw heavy this season. So yes, we're currently at 83 overall on Dak on Underdog. That's 13.5 spots ahead of ADP there. Last faller to mention is Keon Coleman, Bills rookie wide receiver, down 1.1 spots on DK to 70th overall. Same on Underdog, down 1.1 to 79 overall. Talked about Keon Coleman maybe a month or so ago, and people have come to their senses a little bit on him. We're at 80th overall on Underdog, so just barely behind market as he's sunk. I wanted to note this, though, because Keon Coleman sinking does make Josh Allen's stacks more viable. My favorite Josh Allen stack by a mile, by an absolute mile, is Josh Allen, Dalton Kincaid. I have a ton of Dalton Kincaid already. I take him naked plenty, and of course, I try really hard to get Kincaid when I have Josh Allen. But it doesn't always work out, leaving the Allen stacks tough, especially when Keon Coleman was being so overdrafted. But now that Keon Coleman's price is a bit more palatable, at least on Underdog, I'm more likely to take Josh Allen at what I think is a bargain at Josh Allen's ADP on Underdog. But generally, I think all the wide receiver bets in Buffalo are low floor. We've seen them have success with a really rush-centric attack in the second half of last year. They can re-implement that. We've seen plenty of wide receivers fail with, like Gabe Davis, even though Josh Allen is, breaking fantasy. And we've seen the Bills be willing to rotate a lot of wide receivers. Even Steph Diggs at times was rotated. So yeah, right now, I only have Coleman, Khalil Shakir, or Curtis Samuel as part of Josh Allen's stacks only. And I'll probably stick with that strategy unless the prices on Keon Coleman and the others drop more. All right, that is going to do it for this week's Market Monday. We'll be back later this week with Silva and Thorman to talk pace and how that is affecting rankings. Also, an important show on 2024 coaching/scheme changes coming up pretty soon as well. Be sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel. It is indeed free. For producer Luke, for editor Jackson, for Jerry, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.